Hello everyone, back today looking at the demo preview for Foundry. Last time I was playing the alpha version and that was a purchased product through itch.io, and this is a version that is a demo or a preview of the demo that will be posted on Steam Next Fest. It should be representative of what the game will be like once it's posted. If you haven't seen my previous video, I will add a link to it here. So today I'm going to go over the things that have changed in the game since the alpha version was released and what I think that means to the game. And I'm going to talk about the experience of playing the demo and what you can expect to get out of it. Um, there is about a year of development between the release of the alpha version and the release of the demo version. So the demo reflects some of the large changes that have happened to the game since the alpha was released. Um, One of the changes that happened is that I know that the dev team increased in size from about 4 people to around 10 people. The dev has noted that it's probably slowed them down just due to the ramp up time for the new team members. But overall, obviously, when you add uh, people to a development team like this, it's just going to allow them to do more. In any case, on to the game. The first most obvious change is that now when you start the game, you are witnessing your touchdown in a landing capsule. Right now, you're seeing this and it's silent because there are no sound effects, SFX in the game for this sequence, and there's just music. And I've disabled the background music as I don't want to get any copyright strikes. It was a suggestion from the devs that you do this if you're recording. In any case, once you're down, you can interact with your capsule to change the color of your drill and the in-game character. I love to see this stuff. Any sort of customization is great. So yeah, this is a great little addition. Um, I will have a small suggestion that if you change the color of your robot or your drill, I'd love to see that reflected in the game's main menu robot. Um, but obviously, that's not really a gameplay feature. Any case, there's also some new voiceover that welcomes you into the game and gets you started. I'm hoping that this means that all of the tutorial is going to get voiced over. I think right now it's just the initial portion of it. Um, at least from what I remember, I could be wrong. I just don't remember the voice making much of an impact later on in the game. But it's always good to hear the narrator because it comes with an unspoken uh, sort of game direction, I guess. Anyways, um, the voice does sound a bit AI generated. I almost think that that makes sense with the theme. I'm not sure if they're going to end up hiring a voice actor or if that is basically programmer audio. Um, but I think it actually kind of works. You're a giant robot. Makes some sense that there's an AI talking to you to some degree. But again, I don't know um, what the overall story for the game is, so I'm not sure what the direction's going to be there. Another change that you'll notice right away is all of the new art assets in the world. I think just about everything has been reworked. There are new trees, rocks, all the foliage is new. In short, the game looks quite different, I think. I enjoyed looking at all the new stuff. There's new items in all the biomes. They all have their own distinct type of foliage and trees and rocks. It, they all feel very distinct. I think they already felt distinct before, but now it feels a little different. Um, the skybox has also been updated. Now it's just more interesting to look at. It looks great, I think. Now there's also bodies of water, including lakes and rivers and streams. and you can dive into them and go underwater. Water looks great, and you and believe that you could maybe manipulate it a little bit. I haven't played with that too much yet, but it does look like you can make it move slightly. Water is also now a resource. You can use it in the demo to make concrete. Um, and I'm sure you're going to use it for other things. Otherwise, yeah, you could use it to generate power in a steam generator. There's also mountains now. I think before maybe you could call them large hills. These are definitely mountains. They have peaks. I think they look great. Uh, all of the ground terrain texture has been updated. They all look more interesting in general, I think. So yeah, this is all great. Visually, I think the game's looking good. Many of the game structures and the recipes have been reworked. I think the general theme that I'm seeing is that things have been simplified and consolidated when possible. So, for example, instead of needing a separate lab building for each tier of research, you just put everything into a general research server now. There used to be a huge smelter for in the alpha, and that's been replaced by a much smaller 2x2 smelter. There you used to have to build a starter smelter that didn't require electricity. Now these are built into your lander, so you just use those and you never have to worry about building these, which is great because then what happened is you'd have these buildings left over that you didn't use ever, because once you get a real smelter going, you don't need these manually operated biomass fueled generator smelters anymore. Overall, the flow feels better than in the old alpha. Another big change is that the game's equivalent to coal, which is called ignium, can now be found on the surface. Whereas before in the alpha, you needed to dig for it in the underground layer with a mining depot and the rail miners. So that makes production of steel a lot simpler and faster to set up than before. Since you need steel to produce pipes, it also means that you can start playing with fluids earlier than before. That said, for the demo, as I said, the only thing that water is used for is for concrete and for power generation. And right now, there is nothing that uses that much power except for the incinerator. The incinerator is a great new addition. It's a new item that lets you automatically get rid of excess resources or resources that you don't want. I think for the demo there's somewhat limited use for it, but it requires a ton of power, so that it is the one thing that you might need to build extra power for if you're using incinerators, because each one uses a megawatt of power, which is far more than anything else that you can build in the demo. The research tree, you'll notice, has been greatly reduced for the demo. There are many texts in the demo that have been marked as old and are inaccessible in the demo. In particular, anything that has to do with the underground mining is now marked old. I know that underground mining has been reworked in its entirety. Are infinite resource deposits, but they are sort of anchored to a space in the geometry, so that you don't create these giant tunnels of rails that were basically taking up space and preventing you from building down if you wanted to build down in certain areas. Any case, none of that stuff is in the demo, so we'll have to wait to see what it eventually looks like for reals. You'll also notice that solar panels have been moved down. In fact, you can't even access them in the demo at all, because now they're under tier 3. Used to be that solar panels would be your first source of steady power along with batteries. So now you instead have to build generators that you can power with by burning ignium or coal. Um, and they're really effective generators. And you can also eventually build a steam generator that are locked out. And if I had to guess, I would think that you can unlock and build everything that's possible in a demo in maybe 10 hours of gameplay. Some people will be much faster, some people will be slower. It just kind of depends on how you approach it and what you want to take your time on. But it wouldn't surprise me if, on average, dedicated playthrough of 8 to 10 hours would go through most of the demo at this point. But of course, you can keep trying different builds and etc. So I don't think you're necessarily going to run out of things to do. There's a lot you can do in these sorts of games. I know for myself, I ended up building 4 research servers, and I tried to keep them working at 100% all of the time. And I ended up being done with all of my research that was possible, probably halfway through the 10 hours that I played, because I just didn't need to build anything else, or I hadn't built all of the stuff that I wanted to. I hadn't built steel production. I had not built the concrete production, but I was done with research well before I built those. Which meant, by the way, that most of my factories stopped working because I didn't bother storing like large amounts of the research packets. So yeah, once the servers weren't working anymore, then consumption of those went to 0, and they just started to pile up until the factory ground to a halt. Which is fine. It's just kind of weird. It's just because of the demo, I think. Moving on, if we take a look at the tech that is locked out from the demo, there are some interesting things. There's some new things that were not in the alpha. The first one that sort of jumps out at you is drone ports. So now, apparently, we're going to be building large modular buildings with drones. Sounds really interesting. I can't wait to find out more. I believe that I read on the Discord that one of these is going to be a fracking tower that you can use to mine these large resource nodes. Not sure what else, but it sounds interesting. The second and third thing I noticed are basically together. There's a shipping pad and a radio tower. And the description for both of these items makes a reference to the orbital station, or our orbital station. They don't really say anything else about it, because it's a shipping pad. I suspect this is something like Satisfactory's space elevator, where you're maybe supposed to supply it with certain esoteric parts for the orbital station. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's something else, but in any case, definitely interesting. I didn't see anything about this in the Discord, but really I just did a quick search, so maybe it's buried in there and I just didn't see it. Another thing to mention is the game is running very smoothly. I didn't have any crashes whatsoever. I didn't even notice any obvious bugs. It's really good for early access overall, I think. Pretty clean build, at least for me. I think also when you compare this game to other building on automation games, Foundry has a lot of the quality of life features that you might want. They even have a version of Satisfactory's eyedropper tool, which is great. In this case, it's a clipboard that you can use to copy machines or to just copy their settings from one machine to the other if it's the same type of machine. You can use it to grab and copy structural elements, like building blocks or things like that. But you can use it to copy any machine, which is Pretty useful. Another great thing is if you need to upgrade belts, which you do, because there's tiers of belts. You can just select your shiny new belt in your inventory, in your quick bar, and then you hover over the old belts, and with the click of a mouse button you can upgrade the entire thing as long as you've got enough belts in your inventory. You can do the same thing with other things that have tiers. So like assemblers are the ones that come to mind immediately. So assemblers can be upgraded the same way. Belt splitters. Uh, it's all very easy to upgrade, provided you have the item in your inventory. So there's also a snap to mode or free place mode. Uh, Free place basically allows you to go up and down on the vertical plane, because you're still going to be snapping to the tile. So you can't place things between tiles even in free mode. So you're always going to be tied down to the tile set, to the what do you call it? The world tiles coordinates, I guess. Um, So there's some level of snapping that's built in, but overall, yeah, it's nice to have free place mode. You can also place blocks in horizontal mode or vertical mode, which allows you to quickly build towers, walls, and floors, because you can drag things, drag build, which is always great for these sorts of games. And it also works with stairs, which is amazing. I love that. It does not work with machines, however, so you can't just build a row of assemblers with one click. Too bad, but still, what is there is great. So yeah, when you put all that together, what does it mean? What for the demo? I think overall, the experience of the game feels more streamlined than the alpha for sure. You get to things a little bit faster. You it's easier to build bases. You don't need quite as much real estate as before, which is great. Yeah, overall I like it. It's the shapes are easier to work with overall, I would say. Resource ratios are for the most part pretty easy to figure out. Most of them tend to be multiples of 2. And because you have belt splitters, it's easy to split resources for the most part. There's a couple of exceptions. You don't need super complicated spreadsheets. You can do it all in your head as you go. So it makes it very easy to play the game. I think water is a bit of an exception because there's not that much in-game information about the water flow. It's not super clear why you want to use a pump. For example, it's not completely clear what it does when you do use one. So there's no way to measure the water flow right now in the game as far as I can tell. So, okay, but it works. Also, another weird thing with the demo is that there's no elevators now. That means that if you are building platforms like I am to avoid having to flatten terrain, then moving resources up and down between levels that are far away from each other is quite a hassle and leads to a certain monstrosity that I built, because I was somewhat time limited and I didn't want to take 4 hours to build a perfect looking tower. You end up with something like this. Sorry if I'm wounding your eyes. But yeah, so with the elevators, this would be much cleaner. So I wish they kept the elevators in the demo, just so to make these sort of vertical builds a little nicer. The other thing that would make this easier was if you could build large structural blocks early on, because right now you can build the small building blocks, which is okay, but they make very thin columns. or you can build eventually the slightly larger concrete blocks. But the problem with concrete for me is that by the time that I could build concrete, I had already built all of my janky towers. So it wasn't much of a help in that sense. Um, so it'd be great if there was something easy to build that allowed you to build like sort of structural support if you want to build something a little prettier than what I did. Um, Regardless of that, I had a great time playing the demo. I found that by concentrating on building platforms for the factory, like I said in my previous video, you can avoid um, a lot of the digging that you have to do otherwise to make the terrain conform to your base. Some of that digging was making me fall asleep before, so I'm glad that you can completely avoid it by just building these platforms. Um, I'd say that the demo shows that the game devs are prioritizing the right things. They're pointing the game in a great direction. They are getting rid of the clutter and extra steps that are maybe not necessary. Consolidating research into one building, for example, makes it easier uh, to plan your layouts. Anyways, if you are at all interested in these sorts of automation and building uh, games, I would definitely give it a try when it comes out on Steam next. I am very excited to see what the devs bring here, and I hope that we see the next big update well prior to a year from now. That's all I got. And I know I didn't get everything. It would take way too long to figure out a catalog of all the changes. So if I missed your favorite feature, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and until the next one.